Hey there, rock and roll podcast fans. This is Mike Hoban. Welcome to Rat Tales, the podcast that brings you the music and stories of the Boston rock scene that grew out of the mid-'70s at the Rat and some of the other hellhole joints, each with their own sick charm.
Bright blue sky.
And those bright lit blue skies featuring our guest Len Cirelli, who played keyboards for the Rockin Ramrods. They formed in 1963 as a group and released 8 singles. Thanks for being here today. When did you stop playing keyboards?
Well, I started, as a child playing the accordion, and I switched over to keyboard when I was probably around 10, 12 years old.
What was your first band?
The first band I ever played in was a local Newton, Mass band here called Franny and the Impressions.
Did the band play any gigs?
Not really. After that, though, in Newton High School, I met Robin McNamara, and we started a group called Robin and the Hoods, and we did do a few gigs.
Where would you play?
We did mostly like local churches. I remember we did a couple in Maine, like summer type gigs. We didn't do a lot, but we had a lot of fun.
What songs would you play?
At the time, of course, we were doing all cover stuff. A lot of Beatles, a lot of Animals, all the groups at the time, and Dylan was getting popular, because he went electric, so we were doing some of that. And we did do some originals, but not a lot.
Did you do any originals?
I wrote some, but in Robin and the Hoods, Robin wrote the majority of the songs.
Who's Robin McNamara?
Sure, Robin went on to have a hit record called Lay a Little Lovin' on Me. His name was Robin McNamara, and he lived here in West Newton, not far from where we are. And that was a giant hit record. And then he went on to star in the play Hair in various cities around the world, actually. And today he's a record producer.
How did the Ramrods form? How did you come to join them? I
was playing in Robin and the Hoods, and the Ramrods were playing at the Surf, and they had a keyboard player. And they were going on tour with the Kingsmen of Louie Louie fame, in which they did go on the tour. And we, Robin and the Hoods, played at the Surf. We filled in for them. Well, when they came back from the tour, their keyboard player didn't come back for, whatever reason, who knows. Maybe met someone, I really don't know. And they asked me to join the group, and that's how I got into the Ramrods.
Do you remember what year?
It was 1965. I was not in the movie, and wasn't in the band when that song was recorded. That was very early on. But the band did do a movie called East is East. I'd love to get a copy of it. And it was about this, if I remember correctly, it was about this guy that wanted to become a rock star, and he would go to different cities and different places. And in the movie, he came to like the Surf, and we were playing there. And it was a bad movie, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, we've had some warm sounds with the Bachelors. Now let's have some cool sounds.
Something you said or done. Still for me, you are the only one. You got me when you want me, wow. Play it, baby. Really lay on me now.
How soon after you joined the band did you start gigging?
Immediately. Yeah, I jumped right in, and the next thing I know, we're playing with all the big name acts of the time because our manager used to book them into the surf, the three surfs.
The band was mainly playing the various surf clubs?
We were mainly, no, we do any kind of local gigs we could get, churches. In those days there were school dances and, a lot of stuff like that. So we do a lot of that. And if we didn't have a job for the weekend, we'd always play at one of the surfs. And if he had booked a big name group in, we always got the chance to open for them.
What was the audience response to the gigs?
We had built quite a following. I mean, even before I was in the band, they had built quite a following. So wherever we went, we always had good crowds, good response.
When you joined the Ramrods, you already had some singles out. Which ones were they?
Yes, they did. They had I Want to Be Your Man, the cover of the Beatles. A song called Don't Fool with Fu Manchu.
Don't fool with Fu Manchu, yeah. Don't fool with Fu Manchu. 'Cause if you do, he'll make a fool out of you.
I forget the name of the song. I want to say something about the jungle where the bass player used a fuzz tone. It was one of the first times that was ever used. It was particularly on a bass.
That was Jungle Call, the Rockin Ramrods' first single released in 1963.
And none of the records really went anywhere, but we recorded in New York, and it was all top notch, but it just didn't happen recording wise. Oh yes, I actually have them all. Yeah. And of course we used to play some of those. They were on our manager owned the label. It was called Claridge Records.
The manager was also their producer at the time?
No, his name was Bill Spence, and he owned the three surf, I guess you'd call them nightclubs. I think only one still exists, the one in Salisbury Beach. It's not called the Surf anymore, but he was our manager, and he would hire producers to produce the recordings.
Were the singles getting radio play?
Very little. In Holyoke, Massachusetts, it was a real local market. For some reason, they really liked us. So we got a lot of play there, and we loved to play in that area because we were big stars there. But no, they never really did much.
How did the band's sound evolve, and who wrote the songs?
Our bass player, Ronnie Campisi, he was the brother of lead guitarist Vinnie Campisi. He was his younger brother. He was very talented. He not only was he a good musician, he was an artist and a great songwriter. And he wrote all the original songs. And when you listen to them, a song, Mary, Mary, comes to mind. It definitely has his signature on it. It was a unique sound.
Did you know about other local bands like the Remains and the Lost?
Of course, I knew of them. I didn't really know any of those guys personally. We did some gigs with the Barbarians. There was another group called the Pilgrims that were pretty popular. It was also a surf group, and we did a lot of gigs with them also. It's hard to remember, it's been so long ago, but there was a lot of bands at the time.
Do you remember what the Boston music scene was like, and did the band play at the Rat?
No, we never did a gig at the Rat. or the Boston Tea Party. I think the Rat was more, I don't know, I guess today you'd call it metal. You know, at the time, we weren't into that. We were more Beatles type music. But in general, it was a really good scene. I mean, there was, you know, when you went to the Surf, as an example, the place would be packed. I don't know how many people were there. I'm going to say between 500 and 700. And there was never any violence. There was never, you know, any drugs. I mean, I'm sure that existed, but it wasn't openly, you know, you never heard about it. And, you know, they'd have a very few security force, and everyone was friendly, and it was just a great time, you know. And, of course, you know, that was the beginning of Flower Power and, you know, Love the One You're With and all that. And it was really catching on the East Coast, and everybody was great. I just I can't remember one, you know, negative incident. It was a great time.
What was the first single release that you were on?
It was a song called Mary Mary, written by our bass player, Ronnie. And I really liked the song. I think it was one of the best we ever did. There was a great piano part in it. I had a Vox organ with a Hohner piano on top, and I really liked the piano part of that.
Here's Mary Mary. That was Mary Mary, released in 1967. What was it like recording the singles, and where'd you record them?
I can't remember the name of the studio, but it was in New York City. And we would record in the late at night, I think, because it was cheaper. You know, we didn't have a lot of money. But I do remember running into other famous people at the studio. You know, I want to say Herman's Hermits, but that's a little blurry. And for the old timers, the real old timers, once we went in and the Andrews sisters were recording, and you know, they were three kind of old women by then, but boy, they could sing. They were great.
Any idea how many songs the band actually recorded?
We would probably record a half a dozen or so. Ronnie, like I said, would write the songs, and we'd, of course, practice them, and then we'd go into the studio. And, you know, Ronnie had in his head an idea of the sound, and he would mostly work with the engineer and the producer, where I just was content to play, you know.
It's amazing the difference in the production quality in the later records from the beginning ones.
Well, around the time that I joined, you know, now the Beatles were coming out with things like playing the track backwards, and, you know, and Ronnie, he just loved all that, and he really wanted to experiment with things like that. So we tried some different things.
Was Ron producing the records as well?
Well, not formally, but in reality, yes. You know, he'd work with the engineer, and, you know, what he said went. So.
Were the singles getting any airplay either locally or nationally?
I don't recall the stations, but you know, the famous Boston disc jockey Arnie Ginsberg gave us some airplay. I remember, you know, hearing on the radio and just being thrilled, you know, but it never really took off, you know.
So there was no real national play?
No. No.
Wow.
Did the band ever do any TV appearances?
We appeared on Dick Clark's Where the Action Is, which was at the time, a real popular show, and the house band was Paul Revere and the Raiders. And the day we went on, it was in California, and the Chambers Brothers were also on. And we did a lot of, not a lot, but some local TV. Like there was a show called, I'm embarrassed to say it, New Hampshire Bandstand. And we went on that a few times.
And that show was taped around here?
It was shot in a house live in Manchester, New Hampshire.
I wonder if there's any copies of that show around.
I don't know, but I remember one day we went on there, and it was supposed to be like Dick Clark's American Bandstand, but no guys showed up to dance so we had to dance, and none of us were good dancers, and we were so embarrassed, but we got out there and did it.
Did the show have national acts or just local acts?
Not once in a while they, maybe they could grab someone, but it was mostly local acts. A lot of our people knew us over the States from the radio commercials for the surf. He'd have a commercial and say, this week the Doors are going to appear along with the Ramrods, and people heard that. WBZ was heard almost all over the country, and people knew us from that, and they'd yell out, BZ and stuff like that.
What was it like playing with the Doors?
I was thrilled that we were going to open for the Doors, and Light My Fire had just come out and was a monster hit. And we opened, it was only the Doors and us, and we opened the show, and we played, a whole set, maybe an hour, and the Doors didn't show up. So our manager said, I don't know what's going on, keep playing. So, we played so long, we were repeating songs and getting tired, and finally he got in touch with the Doors, and they said, we're not coming. And they had an argument, and I don't know what he threatened them with, but they showed up very late. It was the first time I ever saw leather pants in my life, with Jim Morrison. But Jim Morrison, he just had so much stage presence and charisma. Everybody there was just in awe, the way he moved. And recently, within the last 6 months, I was contacted by an organization that is trying to document all the Doors' undocumented performances, and they had somehow, got my name and asked about that night, and they had another group as opening, which was incorrect. So I was able to, straighten that out, and I actually wrote an article about it for the New England Museum of Music. It was just a great night. They were great.
Before you did the Stones tour, who were some of the other bands the Ramrods opened for, and what was the crowd reaction like?
Well, even some of the bigger name acts had heard about us, in the local scene. But we played with the Ventures. I'm going to go way back now. We played with the Rascals, who were one of the best groups I ever saw, really talented. We played with the Swingin' Medallions of Double Shot of My Baby's Love fame, and they were great. They were kind of a one-hit wonder. The Turtles, oh God. The Left Bank, who recorded Just Walk Away, Renee, another really great group. Tommy James and the Shondells, the Kingsmen. More will come to me, I'm sure, but a lot of acts, the McCoys. It's hard to remember them all.
Did you guys hang out with the band?
Sometimes, a lot of groups were friendlier than others. Like the Ramrods were good friends with the Turtles. They hung out a lot. Really became good friends with the Kingsmen. But in reality, most of the time it was an in and out thing, like that night with the Doors. They came in, played, and they left. So a lot of it was like that. But we would speak in the dressing room and trade stories, and but some of these people like Jim Morrison, they were just larger than life. When I look back on it, I wish I talked to him more.
How did the Stones tour come about?
Our manager, Bill Spence, owned the 3 ballrooms, and he was booking, bigger and bigger rock acts. And then he decided he'd go big time, and he somehow negotiated to book the Stones for, I think it was 3 dates. I remember one was in Shreveport, Louisiana. One was, I can't remember the other 2. It wasn't Boston, though. He just booked them for what cities were left, that he could get for. And so, while he was negotiating with the Stones management, they said, oh, we're looking for an opening act to open the show and to back up Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells and the Vibrations. And Bill said, well, gee, I have a really, popular local group, and, they'd be perfect for this. And that's how it came about. They agreed, and we went.
What city did the tour start in?
Well, the first thing that we did was we had practices, and I can't remember where they were, but, we just couldn't go out there, and because we were backing up two other groups, singing groups, so, it had to be good. So, but the first night of the tour was in Montreal, of the Stones tour. I hadn't seen the Stones yet, and we went out and played 15,000 people. What a thrill. The Bluebells came out, we backed them up. So we were on the stage a long time. The Vibrations came out. And then I see the Stones coming down, and they looked small to me in stature. They're not real big guys. They went on the stage and they played a couple of songs, and it just looked like everyone got up on command and started, rushing the stage, and the Stones management was like, run for your lives, So the Stones and us and everyone that was connected to the tour, we hid, or we ran into a dressing room until we were told to come out. And when we came out, it looked like a battlefield. I mean, there were kids, with broken arms, and the police had dogs, and the Stones equipment was wrecked. And that was the first night of the tour. And it never repeated itself that bad, but there was some, incidents here and there. But that was the worst, the first night.
Did you get to know the Stones and hang out with them?
Yeah, we were on a chartered plane or a chartered bus. All the time. We stayed in the same hotels and whatever. But to be very, very honest about it, Mick and Keith really kept to themselves. I'm not going to say they were unfriendly, but they just, I don't know whether they were songwriting or they were just off doing their own thing. Brian Jones, Charlie Watts, and Bill Wyman were super friendly, and we did get to know them. And as you've probably read, the Stones were into a lot of old blues artists, and those 3 guys would spend hours listening to, Howlin' Wolf and all those guys. Wow. And whenever we had a couple of days off on the tour, Mick and Keith would fly to Florida or something, and we'd all stay around.
The Ramrods backed Patti LaBelle on tour?
And the Bluebells, it was called. Patti LaBelle, the group at that time was actually called the Bluebells. It had a big hit record called I Sold My Heart to the Junk Man. And then, of course, Patti LaBelle went out on her own and became, to this day, a big diva. And some of the other people in that group also went on to have at least one hit record.
That's a long night.
It was a long night, but it was the thrilling nights because there were just, thousands of people. And we played the Boston Garden. Now, that was sold out. And someone had a sign. It's on the back of one of our CDs. Hung a banner that says "Boston loves you, Ramrods." And it was a picture taken of us on stage with the banner behind, and it kind of captured the whole thrill of it.
The Ramrods made a lot of singles. Was there a reason an LP was never made?
I don't really know. My guess is there wasn't enough airplay on the singles to, put the expense of recording an entire album into it. That would be my guess. And you have to remember, this is in 1965. Record labels like, RCA and Mercury, they had a lot of power, with the DJs and stuff like that. And we were just really, our own label, and we really didn't have the clout to get the airplay that we needed.
Are you aware of the Bosstown Sounds bands like Ultimate Spinach and Beacon Street Union?
Oh yeah, I mean, they were playing all over Massachusetts and the East Coast, just like we were. And, of course, we had heard of them. So, every once in a while our paths would cross, but not often because, we were all working, all doing gigs on the weekends and stuff. So, but yeah, we were very aware of what was going on the music scene. And it was mostly Ronnie, felt that the only way that we were gonna, make it, and the Stones even said this to us, that you got to have original material. You can't go on trying to be the Beatles or whoever. And so we did do a lot of that, and with some local success.
The Ramrods were never on the same bill as any of those bands.
Not that I can think of, no. Just with the Pilgrims.
Where were the Pilgrims from?
They were from the South Shore, near where the Surf was located, and Lenny Baker was the sax player, and he had a lot of local fans, and he was really a good sax player. He passed away, but they had a big following also. So if we played on the same bill with them at the Surf, we could get a huge crowd.
What caused the band to break up?
Well, that's a great question. We were all getting older. I wanted to get married. My parents were really putting pressure on me to get out of the business. Their image and what it was really like was just totally off. They saw drugs and everything else, but it wasn't like that, at least at that time, So, and it just seemed like we had reached a peak, but we couldn't go any further. We thought the Stones tour would do it. I remember when we met Dick Clark, he said to us, I've gotten, more compliments and more questions about you guys than I have anyone else in a long, long time. And we really thought this is it, but it just didn't happen. I was thinking of leaving, and then Ronnie, the leader of the group and the bass player, he left. He wanted to devote more time to his songwriting and his artist and stuff, and being an artist. And we got another bass player whose name was Dave Chico Ryan, who became the bass player for Sha-Na-Na. And we went on, but it just wasn't the same, Ronnie was really the glue that held us together. There was just something about the way he wrote the songs and the way he played his style. It just really fit.
What did you do after?
Well, my plan was to start up another group, and but I never did it. I did play. I'd sit in with people, and tried unsuccessfully to get something going, but it just never really happened. And again, I got married, started settling down, and as again, my parents were really putting a lot of pressure on me, and I caved, So I got a real job, as my father would say, and went from there. I never really played professionally. Well, I did a couple of times, but not really. I never played after that. Ronnie lives in the area. I know that for a time he was working for the Boston Globe. I'm not sure if he still does, but he's really into his art and drawing and makes a good living at that. Vinny, his brother, the lead guitarist, lives out in California. Still plays guitar. He's retired like I am and spends most of his time, whenever he can with his grandkids.
Very cool.
Bobby, the drummer. Bobby was a great drummer, by the way. I mean, I didn't realize how good he was until, I started really seeing other people and listening to what they did. I mean, Bobby was great. And he still, as far as I know, he works for Bose, I believe, and he still sits in on studio sessions and things like that. Yeah, he lives in, he was from Watertown. I don't think he lives there anymore, but he lives in Massachusetts.
Did you know about Ill Wind and bands like them?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, to me, they were sort of new age, so to speak. They were doing different things than we were. They were moving ahead, getting more progressive, I think, than we were. I thought they were really good.
Were there ever any Ramrod reunions?
No, we never did a reunion. Vinny and I have joked about it a few times, but I don't think I would do it. It's never happened. So, I'm 66 now, and I think I'm too old to get back up on the stage and play rock and roll. I'd rather, remember it the way it was.
There's a lot of Ramrod compilations out there. Are you involved in any of the compilations or producing any of them?
They're all, of course, Ronnie owned the copyright and, and all that. So he had all the original recordings, and all of that stuff you see is either from him or it's bootleg somehow, But the only way I'm involved in it is the songs that I played on. I don't, there's no royalties or anything like that.
There's so many of them with overlapping songs, so it's hard to know which one to buy. How do you know which ones are the best versions or the best mixes?
Gee, that's a good question. We did record some songs more than once, so it's possible, that they are kind of all original. I really can't say, honestly.
Did you hear what Ron did later with Puff?
Oh, yeah, I heard, all the Puff songs, but that wasn't my thing, I was more the way we were, I wish I could think of a really good example. We did towards the end, we did a lot of Dylan, a lot of Beatles, Animals. I was more, to me, Puff was kind of going in a folky direction, and I was more rock.
There's been some newer bands covering Ramrod songs.
That's right. I can't think of the name of the band, but they did Bright Lit Blue Skies. A terrific version, and Vinny turned me on to that, and I actually got a copy of it, and I thought it was terrific, but it never went anywhere,
It's so cool that more current bands like the older songs enough to cover them.
Yeah, it was cool, and I think it's a real tribute to Ronnie, and his songwriting. I think the Ramrods were a big part of the Boston/New England music scene for a lot of years, and they were definitely a small part of rock and roll history, and I'm really, really proud to have been part of that. It was good times. But I'm really, proud that the band has legs, that it keeps going. And every once in a while I get, a fan will find me on Facebook or something, and we talk about the old days, and I'm really proud of that.
Thanks for listening to Rat Tales, Boston Rock Stories. Rat Tales is produced and directed by Lenny Scolletta and Mike Hoban, with a huge thanks to Medford Community Media in beautiful downtown Medford, Massachusetts.